What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. We have day 2 of Karen Reed Trial 2 in the books. A bunch of witnesses testified, some really good for the Commonwealth, I thought, others not as good. And some interesting points that made this trial seem completely different from the first one. Maybe not completely different, that's a little strong. Very different from trial number 1. And others that seemed kind of similar strategy-wise to trial number 1. So we're going to break all that down. We're going to go through the witnesses, the good, the bad, the ugly, the direct, the cross, the redirect, the recross, the re-redirect, the re-recross. And then we'll talk about what we expect to happen the rest of this week. Thanks for joining me here. Hit that like button. Let's get to it. So we start the day very similarly to how we seem to start and end every day, with disputes about evidence and discovery and what's been turned over and when it's been turned over. By the way, just a programming note, the times are going to be a little wonky from time to time because, like tonight, I've got a cheerleading showcase to go to, a birthday dinner to go to after that. So I'm not going to be able to hit 8:30-ish, which is when I like to. But we'll hopefully get into a groove of that as the trial goes on. But a lot of you will probably be watching on the rewatch crew, which is fine. I will still try to order or answer as many questions as I can live as we go through. But we are going to start out with another dispute. And this time it's that the Commonwealth hasn't turned things over according to the defense. Prior, it was the defense continues to not turn things over. In my opinion, it's a much bigger deal when the Commonwealth doesn't turn things over. But basically, there's new phone data and info that the Commonwealth wants to use. Commonwealth argues you've had this, you just didn't use it before, and the Commonwealth didn't use it before, and we're going to use it now. And it seems to me to be a lot to do with Jennifer McCabe. And basically, they're trying to argue her heart rate is not consistent with somebody that is being involved in a criminal conspiracy, which would be very interesting. Are you going to get an expert to say like where your heart rate should be if you're committing a crime versus somebody else who has different resting heart rates, things like that? Let's take a listen here.
As a witness, I'm going to ask the court to recall. The reason I turned that over was to be transparent and to be collegial. We would not introduce it on direct, but as Your Honor ordered, there was an order not to get into third-party culprit evidence. Jennifer McCabe was never identified as a third-party culprit, yet in the opening, the defense suggested something about 227. If the defense is to cross-examine or suggest that a phone call occurred at 227, this would be to rebut that information. I could have waited until after the cross-examination and then sprung this as a surprise upon the defense because it is powerful evidence showing her heart rate is inconsistent with being in a criminal conspiracy, yet we provided it in advance so they'd have notice days before Trooper Garino would even testify about it.
So look at how ethical I am, Judge Hank Brennan. Quote, Hank Brennan.
The PowerPoints that were provided last night, you don't intend to use either one of those in your...
The presentation I would regarding the text messages and phone calls. At the last trial, Trooper Garino read the text messages from the screen, and at the same time, he would look at the phone calls, and he would go back and forth between the papers. This is simply putting the phone calls with the text messages in the chronological order so that on the screen, rather than be text messages and then refer to the phone calls and state there was a phone call, it can simply be shown on the screen.
What do you say about that?
My opinion on this, and you guys can let me know what you think in the chat. Like, to myself, like, how accurate is that? Is that really going to prove something? My guess is there will be at least one juror who's like, oh, that makes sense. Sometimes as a prosecutor, sometimes as a defense attorney, you're looking for anything that can work with any individual juror.
That was little. It's content you had. It's messages that came in at the last trial.
Basically, Hank is agreeable. It says that, you know, we can kind of wait and discuss this and see if there are issues. I'll call Guarino today, do some background stuff. I'll call him back again later. That's what ends up happening later in the day. And then we get to some more discussion about ARCCA, and surprise, surprise, ARCCA's not just sitting there waiting for what Judge Cannoni has to say. They are still living their lives and maybe not available to just come on in short notice on Friday. So we're trying to figure out when we can get ARCCA in. And the defense is like, what exactly are we doing with ARCCA here again, Judge? Can you tell us? Because we've already had voir dire. They've already testified once. We're going to turn over the new testing that they're doing. We realize there are these new deleted text messages, but like, can you give us a focus of what we're going to do with ARCCA?
Your Honor, may I have one quick follow-up question?
Yes.
Thank you. The reason I asked for, and I appreciate the opportunity for the voir dire, it's not lost on me. But what I'm trying to understand is I want to hit the target, whatever the target of the
So one of the targets, one of the big concerns I have is that 105 or more text messages were deleted. And you said in due course. I have no idea what you mean by in due course. It's a pending case. I need to figure out that at least.
That's
And there,
very helpful.
okay.
And Your Honor, within 30 days, if you make the call, the defense had this very same issue with a matter with District Attorney Morrissey. So
He's like, Judge, we're not the only lawyers that have issues with this.
you said, I'm unclear of what the deletions are, and we're happy to have testimony, the ARCCA witnesses can discuss it.
There to bring them if they still have them.
Exactly. That is also very helpful. But this 30-day auto delete, a lot of attorneys do that. District Attorney Morrissey
So
did that.
I need something in writing about that. That's not my understanding on how you keep records in a pending case. And remember, you still said out of the blue, months later, a bill came. This gives me pause about that, frankly. Okay.
We're happy to
So-
discuss that as well, Your Honor.
All right. So that's what this is all about. And by the way, the audio does get much, much better as we get to the direct and cross of witnesses. They actually get behind the microphones. So don't worry about that. We are using a different feed today. You guys let me know what feed is best and we can continue trying all of them as we do these recaps. So Kerry Roberts gets back on the stand. And we saw some of her testimony yesterday. And if we remember from trial one, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, most of it was she's pretty consistent. She seems pretty, even-handed. She's not overly pushing to push the Commonwealth's narrative. She didn't give them a ton, but she was a pretty credible witness, and she said some things that the Commonwealth was going to be able to use. Okay? And from my perspective, I thought she did a fine job. The defense didn't cross her because, again, I don't think she was like a slam dunk home run witness for the Commonwealth. But the Commonwealth turned Kerry Roberts into a star witness for them. And what do I mean by that? Well, now she's going to testify to everything. She's going to testify to the timeline, to I hit him, to John's dead, to the plow's dead, to Karen, her demeanor wasn't right. She knew exactly where he was and we didn't. The taillight was broken big time. There was metal poking out. I was afraid somebody was going to catch their jacket on it, which I actually think is the Commonwealth knows they got to do something because that plastic can't make those cuts. But now there's metal poking out. Is that going to be what they use? Is it, if they're going to use that, the metal better be poking out in multiple spots to make all those deep gashes on John O'Keefe's arm. And if it does, and the science matches and the math matches, okay, let's see it. And we'll be open to talking about an expert. I'm doubtful, but let's see it. Right. But they have turned her into their star witness. That was their goal. They have changed course. This is a different trial, a different presentation. She is witness number 2, and witness number 1 was America's hero. That's what they want to do. And guess what? The defense is like, all right, things are different this time around. Well, we're going to cross her. And we're going to cross her hard on this one. So she takes the stand, finishes up direct. Let's listen to her talk a little bit about the taillight description, which again, the Commonwealth, in my opinion, at least they didn't just sit on their hands and not really do anything to tell the jury, confirm, how is it possible that we don't know, what this taillight looks like? Well, they've turned her into the key witness before Proctor or any other cop got their hands on this taillight. She makes it seem like, it's really broken and missing and metal poking out and all of these descriptions that can be helpful to the Commonwealth's case. 2 days in, it's already a better description than Lally gave, in my opinion. Brennan has already done a better job than Lally did trying to prove this stuff. Now, as a lawyer, when you prep a witness, and it seems like Brennan realizes this because every witness he talks to, he kind of focuses on their inconsistencies. When Jackson gets up and says, what did you guys talk about? You realize inconsistencies are usually really bad. And a good defense team is going to cross-examine you on those inconsistencies. And oh boy, does Alan Jackson do that. But you've got to weigh the risk and the reward as a lawyer. Do you want what you think is good evidence to help you prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt? And you deal with the inconsistencies? Or do you say, forget it, let's just be consistent? Now, at the end of the day, I always tell my clients, say what you remember, say what you believe the truth to be, and we'll deal with the rest of it. Chips will fall as they may. So let's take a listen.
Did you have a chance again to look at the defendant's taillight on her Lexus?
Yes, when we left the house, she pointed it out to me.
Did you stop and get a closer look?
Yes, I did.
I want you to describe to the jury your best memory of what it looked like.
Karen pointed out and said, look, my taillight. And she said, do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him. But the taillight itself, the piece was missing. And as you got closer, there's a metal sort of square, and one of the pieces was sort of sticking out. And I only remember it because I thought if someone walks by that, they're going to catch their jacket on it.
How long of a time did you?
So some people are asking about what was the best about her testimony. So again, before cross, right? We got to remember direct examination. I know it's hard to erase cross from our memory as we come in and talk about it, but before cross, she testified to the Commonwealth's theory of the broken taillight and timing that helped. She testified negatively about Karen Reed, and she testified that Karen Reed knew or said he was dead. He was hit by a snowplow. He knew right where the body was, or she knew right where the body was when they clearly couldn't see until they moved snow away. Some very key points. And she's trying to kind of pacify the fact that everybody's connected to everybody, right?
Have to actually look at the taillight?
Under a minute.
How close were you to the taillight when you looked at it?
I was in front of it. I could see.
And when you talked about the taillight, you said a piece was missing. Is this the left side or the right side of the Lexus that you saw the piece of the taillight missing?
It was the right side, so it was the passenger taillight.
May I approach?
Yes.
Photo?
That is Karen's SUV.
Is it similar or a fair and accurate depiction of how you saw the vehicle that morning?
Without the snow, I can't be positive, but this square piece was missing, as is in.
Not a great answer, right? Without the snow, but Brennan pushes harder. And again, Lally sometimes would get a bad answer and kind of move on. Brennan doesn't. Brennan pushes in and gets the answer he wants and needs.
This picture.
The photograph you look at is not the car in the snow in the driveway the day you saw it.
Correct.
Putting that aside, is that a fair and accurate depiction of the damage that you saw to the right rear taillight of Ms. Reed's car that morning?
Yes.
So again, he's like, okay, so there's no snow on it, right? Right. Okay. Putting that aside, it's like, well, how can we put that aside when that's the way she saw it? So if there's no snow, clearly it looks different to her. No objection. She was able to say, yes, that is the damage done. Green Mermaid said, Karen Reed showing the taillight to Kerry opposes the cover-up theory. Well, you would think that, except we've been here already through this trial and we know what this cover-up theory is. And they say it was cracked, not smashed to bits with 40-something pieces. So yes, it was cracked. There was small damage done to it at this point, but later much more, and that's where the cover-up happened. Kerry is supposed to help the Commonwealth prove their side of that theory. Nikki said, defense missed such a big opportunity to question her taillight observations. Last trial and today, she said the snow covered most of the taillight. I kind of agree, Nikki. Now, they did a lot. You don't want to push too hard. You got to kind of pick your battles. But I agree, like that answer right there was not a great answer. You say it's consistent today, but when you saw it, there was snow covering it, right? And in all these pictures, there's not snow covering it, so you would agree it's different. At least something like that to me.
Introduce this as an exhibit, please.
Any objection?
No objection. Okay. With the court's permission, I'd like to publish Exhibit 13.
Sure.
Ms. Roberts, I'm going to ask you to take a look at the photo that you just described. Do you see the white area in that photograph?
Yes.
Is that where the taillight had missing part?
Yes.
And where was the metal in relation?
I mean, the entire taillight is gone there. Come on, you can see the red thing here, and like everything else is all gone and broken. I would not say that that's a little square or a little circle or a little piece. But again, she is purely testifying, and this is very important, good evidence for the Commonwealth. That picture, which is going to line up with all these pieces when we put them back together and what it looks like, and the cops are going to testify too, when we put it all back together, it fit in this slot right here, which Kerry Roberts said before any cop touched it, that's what the taillight damage looked like. If the jury believes Kerry Roberts, that is incredibly important testimony for the Commonwealth because it does smash the conspiracy theory and the cover-up. Doesn't help with the science of the accident reconstruction, which is why I've always thought that is the key evidence in this case. But that is why we're going to see on cross, the number one thing the defense wanted to do was crush her credibility. Did they do that? We'll have to wait and see.
To that white part that you see.
If you look at the white part, it's the upper left. It's sort of like a rectangle, but it's vertical, sort of.
And that's the metal part that you were concerned about?
Yes, one of the side. It's almost like an encasement, but the right side, I think it was the right side, was sticking out a little bit, like out from the car toward me.
Did you express any concern about the metal sticking out?
Yes, because I thought at that height, it could clip someone's coat or something if they were walking by.
You mentioned
Oh, how nice of that. How nice of a description is that? If somebody walked by, she's not going to say it could cut them, but it could clip their coat.
the defendant asked you if you thought she hit somebody.
Correct.
How many times did she ask you that?
She asked me that in the driveway. How many times? She said, do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him? And my answer was, no, I don't think you hit him. I'm sure you hit something because your taillight's broken, but I don't think you hit him.
I think that's kind of helpful to the defense. Lesko says, dude, you're smarter than that. Horrible witnesses who belong in jail, horrible witness who belongs in jail. You can't lie to a grand jury, admit it under oath, and then not get locked up in a fair world. This sullies all of FSU. Well, I don't speak for all of FSU, number one. Number two, you can say whatever you want, and you're entitled to your opinion. But perjury, people want to say perjury, and we're going to get into this when we get into cross. Perjury is knowingly and willfully lying under oath, telling an untruth. Proving that is more difficult than you might think. And all the people on the internet that want to act like it's so easy and they can just snap their fingers, you'll hear most people, most like lawyers talking about this. I would think, maybe I'm wrong. Most lawyers talking about this are like, maybe it's perjury, or it's likely perjury, or if she was somewhere else, they might prosecute her for perjury. I highly doubt there's going to be a prosecution here for Kerry Robertson perjury. Now, did she get caught up in a lie? Did she get impeached? Is the defense going to be able to crush her credibility? Those are two different questions on then was a crime committed on the stand here today that's actually going to be prosecuted and that she will be convicted for. Don't be bringing FSU into this. I don't sully FSU. And it's so easy, right? It's so easy. And no, Peter, you're smarter than that. And we all know, we all guarantee X, Y, and Z is going to be the result. And then we hear from jurors. And everybody's like, how is that possible that the jury thought that? It's like, that's the point, is we don't know. Even those of us that do this for a living, we make these arguments, but we try to gather research. We try to understand how people think, how they feel, what they believe, what they're going to consider important and what they're not. Sometimes we're right. Sometimes we're not. So any lawyer that thinks he knows it all and knows exactly what some jury's going to do in every single trial, I'd like to meet him and talk to him. On Brennan's redirect of Kerry, he was bringing up the ring camera footage. I don't remember that coming in prior to redirect. I thought redirect can only clear things up from cross. They can. It definitely came out in cross. I'm going to save some of these for redirect, though. Yeah, most of these questions that are started on the redirect are later on. Okay. See what else we got. She describes finding John. It's really sad. A lot of testimony that was kind of tearjerker today from the Commonwealth, which I do think helps their case. Again, you want the jury to really want to bring justice for the victim if you're a prosecutor. She talks about what his left eye was fine. His right eye, looked like something happened, which I thought opened up maybe a fight, maybe a punch. She started CPR. She didn't know it was John until they cleared the snow. Karen, was talking about hurting herself. There was no snow under John, just grass and his phone. And then more statements from Karen that she talks about.
Because there was still COVID restrictions. John's brother was already on his way there. And Mr. O'Keefe at some point said, he's gone, Peg. And he slammed his hands on the dashboard. But they didn't actually know if he was gone yet. At one point, Karen called me from the ambulance. And on the phone, Mrs. O'Keefe said, Karen, what happened? And she said, I left him at a party. And Mrs. O'Keefe said, and you just left him? And Mr. O'Keefe said, all right, that's enough. She's been through enough. Then we hung up with her. I said, we're on our way to the hospital.
Let me ask you a question. When the defendant said that she left him, did she say whether she left him outside or inside?
No,
Was the follow-up question never asked?
no.
He brings that out on multiple witnesses that she left him, but did she say inside or outside or anything like that? It's like, no, but that lines up with what Karen Reed says, right? Dropped him off and left him. Now the Commonwealth's going to say it lines up with what we say. Hit him and left him. And that's the crime. And he's going to be able to use Karen Reed's own words, at least for count 3, leaving him behind. Both sides are going to be able to use that. She drove the O'Keefes to the hospital, described what she saw when she saw John. She and McCabe were not great friends before, but since this, they've become great friends. And they decided to write down everything that happened together. And this is where Brennan's trying to kind of pacify all the connections to me and did an okay job, but also admitted that there are a lot of connections. Lank's daughter and her daughter are friends and they know the Lanks, and, they went to the Lanks' house, and we're going to listen to her kind of describe how that interaction went.
Drop them off, pick them up.
Your children would sleep over each other's house?
Yes,
So you had a friendly relationship with Mr. Lank before you found John?
yes.
And do you continue to have a friendly relationship with him?
Did what?
Do you continue to have a friendly relationship with him?
Yes,
Did you go to his house the day after you found John?
I did.
Who were you with?
Well, Jen and I had gone to the O'Keefe's house together with, I don't know if it was one or two of her daughters and both of my kids. And then when we were leaving, my daughter said, "Can you drop me off at Mike Lank's daughter's house?" So I dropped her off.
And did you do that? You dropped her off?
Yes, I did.
When you dropped her off at the Lank house, did you speak to anybody?
His wife came out and got into the back seat just to find out how I was and how the O'Keefes were and
How were you?
how were they?
How were you?
Oh, I was not well.
I mean, any doubt they're all friends, which it is what it is, right? It's okay to have friends in law enforcement. It's great to have friends in law enforcement. They probably shouldn't be vital parts of investigations dealing with you. If you're a witness, if somebody's a victim, if you're somebody that's an accused or even a suspect, they shouldn't be involved. So it's not damning that they're friends with them. That's okay. But it's what happened after and the precautions that just weren't taken. That's the problem.
And did you have a long conversation with Mr. Lank's wife?
Yes,
Was Miss McCabe with you?
yes,
After you left the Lank house, you left your daughter at the house?
yes,
You remained in the car?
yes.
Oh. At some point, did you speak to Mr. Lank's wife again?
Yes,
Are you friendly with her?
yes,
Did you ever try to get inside information about this case?
no,
And that's the problem. Your friend's wife or your friend shouldn't have inside information about a case you're involved in. I mean, she's their star witness. Lank shouldn't be doing anything in this, right? That's what I see as a lawyer. And we talk through conflicts of interest and even the appearance of impropriety. But no, I didn't try to get any inside information. And I think that part of this gets nuked when we see with our own eyes Proctor's texts to his friends, some in law enforcement, some not. So whether you're trying to get inside info or not, and on cross, he gets out that she talks to the prosecutors and Tully and all them 50 plus times, the victim's advocate. It's a lot of discussions.
After this case began, did you ever come to court?
Did I ever come to where?
To court.
Yes,
And what was the reason you came to court?
to support the O'Keefe family.
At some point, did you stop coming to court? And
I
don't answer just yes or no.
Yes,
Were you aware or watching about any type of news or publication on this?
yes,
As you were watching and learning information, did you begin to contact people at the district attorney's office?
yes, I did.
Did that include victim witness advocates?
Yes,
Did it include law enforcement assigned to the case?
Objection.
The form of the question, I'm sustaining the objection.
Who did you contact?
specific names?
Yeah.
Steve Nelson, my victim advocate, Yuri Buchanan, who was a state trooper. And at one point I contacted Michael Morrissey's office.
My bad. I thought it was Tully, but it was Yuri. Even worse, right? She's contacting people that are, if you remember last trial, Lally tried to do as much through Yuri as he could because he went everywhere with Proctor because, obviously they don't want to use Proctor they want to use him for as little as possible. And yet this is who she's talking to amongst these 50 plus conversations as just a witness. I don't know. That doesn't mean she's lying, but if I'm a juror, I'm like, especially it's going to be very different for most of the witnesses who didn't speak to these people 50 plus times.
Do you remember at any time being interviewed by police officers or state police about this case?
At my house on January 29th.
So that same day you found John, you were interviewed?
Yes,
Do you remember who interviewed you? Do
I do not.
you remember your mental state at that time?
I was not well. It was in the evening at some point.
Were you interviewed at a later time by any other law enforcement?
Yes,
Okay, where were you at that next interview?
I think I was at Jen's house. We were making a timeline together when 2 law enforcement showed up to question her. But I happened to be there, so they took us in separate rooms and questioned both of us.
Were you sober at that point?
Yes.
And what was your mental state then?
Still, we hadn't even had a funeral. So I was,
So to me, this is Brendan setting up a little bit because we didn't know what was going to come on cross, but setting up a little bit. If there are issues and some discrepancies in what you said, I was in shock. I had some memory issues right there at first. Me and Jen McCabe wrote it all down. That helped solidify it. Feels like he was laying the groundwork for that a bit.
Still, I couldn't believe what was happening.
All right. Then they play the video from the scene. They talk a lot about where John's phone went, things like that. But another thing I thought was interesting, she says she did say a prayer over Karen, which if you go back to the firefighter paramedic's testimony, he's like, oh, I never said that. I didn't see that. I never said that. Well, it happened. So what's going on with that guy's testimony? Will the jury remember all this? That's the other thing. It's like all these little nitpicky things. I get to rewatch it and stop it and slow it down and speed it up and discuss it with you guys. The jury doesn't get to do that. But will they remember? It's like all this talk about, impeaching this guy for saying they were praying over her. It's like, well, that did happen. Then we get to cross. And they get into the 50 times she talked to people at the DA's office. And then what's interesting is on direct, she talks about talking to Michael Morrissey and doesn't bring up witness intimidation or harassment. But on cross, when they're talking about that very same subject matter, she makes sure to slip it in, which is why this time she seemed like she was pressing much more to do everything she could for the Commonwealth and to convict Karen Read. Last trial, it did not feel like that. This trial, it seemed pretty obvious. Will it be obvious to a jury? I don't know.
Sometimes Jen would say, could you ask Steve this? Because I had a rapport with Steve.
Okay. Were those conversations by text message or phone calls or both?
I would usually text him.
Okay. What about the conversations with Mr. Morrissey, the elected district attorney? What were the circumstances under which you contacted Mr. Morrissey?
Well, during the course of this trial, the witnesses have been harassed.
That's not my question.
Objection.
But I'm answering your question.
Hold on. I'm going to sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you. Were you phoning him? Were you meeting him? Were you texting?
Even Judge Canoni's like, no, come on. But she made sure to, and now the jury's heard that.
him? That's my question. The circumstances of the communication itself.
I phoned the office asking for a meeting, had a meeting, and then he left a voicemail at some point and texted me and said, I just left you a voicemail.
Okay. Was that the extent of your conversations with Mr. Morrissey, the elected DA?
I had one other meeting with other witnesses
Okay.
and the DA.
And turning to Yuri Buknik, what were the logistics? I'll use that word instead of circumstances. What were the logistics of you contacting Yuri Buknik? Was it by phone? Was it in-person meetings, text messages, or all of the above?
All of the above.
How many times would you say that you've spoken with Yuri Buknik?
Spoken or communicated?
Sorry, good point. Communicated with.
Probably 20.
Okay. When
That feels like a lot because you're going to see how involved he was in the case, but not asking for any inside information.
was the last time? Actually, let me ask you a different question. Have you ever met with Mr. Brennan before your testimony today?
Yes.
What was the circumstance of that meeting?
Going over my testimony from the last trial.
Okay.
And sort of just asking questions on what might come this time. Would I be cross-examined? I wasn't last time. Just sort of, all the things went through my testimony.
Okay. When was that meeting?
I don't know, in the last couple of weeks. I don't know.
Okay. Where was the meeting?
At the DA's office.
Who else was there?
Different times that I would meet with him. Steve Nelson would be there. One time, Brian Tully was there. Mr. Brennan's assistant.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Brennan's assistant.
Okay.
I don't know. Adam Lally and Laura McLaughlin.
Were those meetings, you said there were 2 meetings? Or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, I think there were 2.
Okay. Were those close in time to one another? You mentioned 2 weeks ago. Were those both 2
I
weeks?
said a few weeks ago, but the other meeting was just before I was going to testify.
Meaning, what, yesterday, the day before?
Last week.
Was that also at the DA's office?
Yes, it was.
Were you shown anything at that meeting?
Was I shown anything?
Videos, testimony, transcripts,
No,
reports?
no,
Nothing?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We went over my testimony on the screen. And then I just talked about my testimony.
Interesting. Brennan's literally sitting there with them, playing their testimony from the last trial on screen and going through it. And it's still this different between trial 1 and 2 for the first 2 witnesses. I found that interesting.
testimony from the last time.
Okay. When you say you went over your testimony on screen, what do you mean?
We watched my testimony from the first trial on a TV screen.
Okay. So
So then she says first trial, and I kept cringing because she says it multiple times. And I'm going to let it run so we can hear it a couple times, but that's not great.
you were shown something. You were shown a video of your prior testimony.
Yes.
So I'd like to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
And she had said it, I think this was the second or third time that she had said the first trial, Judge Canoni stops it, calls a sidebar, and that's kind of the end of that. Again, now we've got witness harassment and there was a first trial. This creates an opportunity for the jurors to think about all sorts of things they shouldn't, and that is not admissible. Well, what happened in the first trial? If it didn't end the first trial, maybe there'll be another trial after this, so maybe we don't have to come to a verdict. Witness harassment. Is that why they had to get rid of the first trial? All sorts of things that are being discussed that are inadmissible, that shouldn't be discussed, that aren't necessarily more prejudicial to one side or the other. I mean, I guess the witness harassment is without, all the context. But when I look at this, I say, you've got to control your witnesses. They've got to know what they can and can't say, and don't let this stuff happen. You really have to stop this from happening because it's a problem. Brian B. said, should the defense have asked for a mistrial due to harassment? They don't want a mistrial. They don't want to do this again. I think they're pretty confident in how this trial is going to go for them. And just one statement about it, they're probably going to hope it doesn't come back and blow up again like it did the first trial, but we'll have to wait and see. I see a bunch of people in the chat saying they're coming from Melanie Little's channel. What's up, everybody? Streamed a long day over there. I just can't believe all the people that streamed this trial for the whole day. That takes some gumption. That's a lot. It's a lot of streaming, a lot of talking. So, I mean, kudos to them. Kudos to them for sure. Mitsame, Peter, how do you feel about Bev saying, I'll allow it instead of overruled? Have you seen other judges do this on the reg? I actually have not personally. It doesn't really bother me. I know some people hate it. It doesn't really bother me that she says, I'll allow it versus overruled. Ben, he was hit by a car. The Commonwealth had a horrible expert that couldn't articulate. So here's my question to you, Ben. If you truly believe he was hit by a car and you think that's the simplest explanation, that's what really happened. If the Commonwealth has another horrible expert who can't articulate that to you, what would your vote be as a juror? If they can't actually prove to you he was hit by a car, what would your vote be? Kerry said, if you lot at upper left, sort of rectangle, same vertical piece the Commonwealth does not have. I'm absolutely positive both sides are going to look at this taillight and explain exactly why it fits in to their description and explanation of what happened. Okay, what else do we have here? They talk about the dash cam footage, some impeachment about where Jen McCabe was when they called 911, what you could or couldn't hear Karen Reed say on the video. Impeaches her a little bit about, the Ring doorbell camera didn't pick you up when you guys walked out. She showed her the Ring doorbell. It's like, it clearly wasn't when you walked in. She's like, I said, maybe when I walked in or walked out. He's like, no, you didn't. Could your memory be faulty? He's trying to get every witness to do that. And so far successfully, every witness's memory is a bit faulty. And when you have faulty memories, can you really build a credible case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt? I think they're doing a good job of hitting the credibility of each witness. Will it be enough? Will jurors think, because they're clearly faulty about this, whether it's the jacket, the puffy jacket, or 2 or 3 times, whether she said, did I hit him? Whether it's walking into the house versus out of the house, Karen pointing out the taillight, is that going to be enough for them to throw out the important testimony that these witnesses did have to say? That's a jury question. That is a jury question. But Karen Reed's own words are going to make some of this a moot point, in my opinion, for at least some jurors. Maybe they'll just throw it out. Maybe they'll be like, whatever, I don't care. But we'll see. We'll see. We are going to get into some of their really battles about whether or not she lied in the grand jury testimony when Jackson kind of hits it multiple times. We're just going to play one of those. But he does get her to admit it was faulty at the grand jury and what she said was wrong. She didn't mention the cracked taillight in the initial police interview. That's a problem. Let's just a little bit of Jackson discussing with her the cracked taillight and what she saw.
Okay.
Does that matter? No?
Nope.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection that you did discuss the taillight at that time?
Yes.
And did you tell Trooper Prince and Trooper Keefe that you noticed the back right taillight in the middle, quote, in the middle, your words, was broken and a piece of the metal encasement was pushed forward.
Yes,
Okay. You didn't say the taillight was completely shattered, correct?
correct,
You didn't say that the entire lens was missing, correct?
correct.
You said it was.
And this is him attacking her important testimony. And this is where I think a lot of it should be, and he did do some of it, because these are the important things. These are the important facts you have to watch out for. These are the important facts you have to discredit. Not just generally, she's not honest, because I just don't know. I don't know. Are jurors going to think because her testimony was faulty at the grand jury that everything she says here is a lie? I think some will, but I don't know about all of them.
Broken in the middle. Is that
Yes.
right? And then you described today that a square piece was missing,
Yes, that's the piece I was referring to in the middle.
just in the middle of the taillight, though. That was how you described it.
Yes.
I'd like to shift gears for a quick second and talk about.
All right. So that was it. That was kind of how he picked apart her taillight discussion. He does talk about the Lenk connections, friends with the Alberts, and how everybody's friends with the Alberts, and the Lenks meeting was 45 minutes, but she stayed in the car. Jen went inside, but just to go to the bathroom. It's like, how do you know she just went to the bathroom? But that was her testimony. They were there for 45 minutes. He gets in prior statements of hers now. He wants to kind of go through them, repeats a lot of what she said before. The trooper, she's kind of setting her up. The troopers asked you, do you know anything else? Anything else that's important? And she battled him. She was like, oh, I don't know that they said that. I don't remember. He showed her report. She's like, I'm not sure. I don't remember them saying. Was there anything else important? It's like, if your friend passed away and you're a witness, wouldn't you tell them everything? You're really going to hold back that somebody said I hit him, or somebody knew these things that now, as you sit here today, you basically seem like that proves her guilt? You didn't tell them that? Why would you not tell them that? So what did she not say? Well, she didn't say Karen called her at 5 a.m. and the first thing she said is John's dead. And again, she said she didn't take that to mean that Karen actually did this, but just that she was panicked. She didn't say anything about the taillight, Google search, praying, things like that. He just went into how those didn't make it into all of the statements. She admits that she and Jen McCabe worked together on the timeline. Their memories affected each other. I thought that was incredibly well done by Jackson to get her and Jen McCabe to basically be like this. So they've got to eat each other's warts. They are in lockstep. If one of them's talking to people, both of them are. Jen McCabe even reached out to her to say, can you call the victim's advocate? Because you have a rapport with them. I thought that was really well done by Jackson to really knit them together. Jen McCabe was listening to your interview. She's like, no. And Jackson's like, well, wasn't there a text message where she said she's telling them everything? Objection, sustained. And then in that line of questioning, just to think about the structure and how you set up and lay out a cross-examination, Jackson was setting all this up, says Jen McCabe and her intertwined, says Jen McCabe knew there was listening to the interview. And then she's like, oh, by the way, when's the last time you talked to Jen McCabe? This morning, when she wished me good luck. By the way, Kerry Roberts started testifying yesterday. But if that's all they talked about, they didn't talk about anything else. What's a jury going to think? What's a jury going to think when they hear that? She says she never testified that Reed told McCabe to Google hypothermia. And that's when we get back to the grand jury testimony and he starts impeaching her. And we're going to listen to some of that now.
Isn't it true that you were next asked by Mr. Lally in front of the grand jury, quote, what, if anything, did she, Ms. Reed, ask Ms. McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard?
That you heard. That is the important part.
End quote. Remember being asked that question?
No.
And she says, I don't remember that question. Tanya, the defense attorney seems to be just asking questions or witnesses questions on mincing words, no real evidence, losing empathy from the jury, in my opinion. People going through trauma event will accidentally mince a few words. Okay, so this is an important distinction because I think some jurors may see it this way. I will say no real evidence. The defense doesn't need to have no real evidence at this point. They're attacking credibility. And the credibility of witnesses is absolutely important in these cases. There are jury instructions that say the jury can literally throw out a witness's testimony if they find them to not be credible. So to act like it's not a big deal that a witness isn't credible, I think is missing the point. Now, do you think this is a big deal or not a big deal? Saying I hit him 2 times versus 3 times? Okay. Completely missing details like the jacket and what you did and where people were standing and what was happening. Completely saying something that was not true in front of the grand jury to get her indicted. Some of those definitely seem like a bigger deal than others. It doesn't all seem like mincing words to me. But again, if you guys think it seems like mincing words, let me know and we'll dig into it some more.
Look at like 16 through 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection? That was the question that you were asked?
Yes.
And in response to that question, you stated, quote, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long Google hypothermia, correct?
Google hypothermia, how long, and Google hypothermia. Didn't finish the how long part, right? And somebody asked, Michelle said, when AJ asked Kerry if she heard Karen Reed ask Jen to do the Google search and Kerry said, no, I was told that. I wish AJ would have immediately asked by whom. I got to be honest with you, Michelle. I get what you're saying. I think we all know the answer, right? I think the jury knows the answer. I think they're just going to assume everything that was told to Kerry Roberts came from one Miss Jen McCabe.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
That was very detailed, you'll agree, that that's a very detailed and specific recount of an event. You recounted where you were, back of a cruiser, or they were in the back of a cruiser, correct?
Yep.
You recorded or reported the time, it was right around the time that you thought they were lifting John up and scooped him up onto the gurney, correct?
Yep. I thought it was about that time. I wasn't sure.
Location,
I'm sorry, I didn't get that in.
And now he goes into just how detailed this was. Same thing with Nuttall. It wasn't just like he was wearing a winter clothes, because that can be vague. It was like a puffy big jacket. We had to move out of the way. It's just like, it's weird to be dead wrong on details, right? Kayla E said, why say do not recall the messages how long to die now? Just say yes. I think it's because she didn't say it to certain people. It wasn't said to her. I think that that's her struggle here is how far can I go? I've changed my story kind of multiple times. What am I going to stick to? What did I actually hear? What did I not hear? What is Jen McCabe going to say? What are other witnesses going to say? I think that's kind of the struggle right now.
And so you were talking over each other.
that's my mistake.
What was your answer, Ms.
I
Roberts?
thought it was about the time they lifted him up, but I wasn't sure.
You were very detailed about who was there. It was you, it was Jen, it was my client, Karen
Yes.
Reed, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
You're so detailed that you talked about where you were standing next to the cruiser open door, correct?
Yes.
What the others were doing, holding hands and praying, is that right?
Yes.
And the actual words used. You were as detailed about all of that as the actual words used. She asked her to Google hypothermia and how long, and then you stopped, Google hypothermia, end quote, correct?
Correct.
You will agree, at least for that purpose, you painted a very, very detailed picture in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
Yeah.
Except it's not true, is it?
I did not hear her ask that. I was told she was asked that.
And that's where Michelle said she wished she would have asked who told you that.
In
The
the
answer to my question, Ms. Roberts, and I'm trick question. What you told the grand jurors was not true. You never heard her, my client, ask anyone to Google anything.
So it was kind of low. You never heard my client ask anyone to Google anything, which means what you told to a grand jury under oath is not true.
I did not.
And yet, that's what you testified to under oath, under penalty of perjury, in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
I did.
And the reason you did that, the reason that you said that false statement was because someone told you to say it, correct?
Object.
Is that, I'm going to let her answer.
Nobody told me to say it.
The judge is letting some stuff go. And I will say, sometimes it's easier to try a case against a better lawyer. And I think Brennan is more prepared than Lally. So the impeachments are actually much cleaner This time around, because like people aren't lost, they're not like looking for a transcript or where are they going. It's a lot easier, even though they've battled. It seems like there's a little more mutual respect there between the lawyers and page and line number. And okay, give them that. Okay, we're going to do this. They'll make their objection when they lose. If there's not as many sidebars, I think it just feels so much smoother overall. That might just be me. You guys tell me, does this trial feel smoother overall than the first trial?
I knew it happened at that time,
How did you
which
know
is
it
why I
happened?
said it.
How did you know it happened, Ms. Roberts, if no one told you it happened?
Because we wrote a timeline. We already spoke about
So
that.
the timeline that Jennifer McCabe helped you with, that influenced your testimony in front of the grand jury, correct? Obviously.
I
He's
was
like, correct. Obviously, Jen McCabe's timeline, your timeline together, affected your testimony in front of the grand jury. I mean, he's building his house, and to me, he does a great job. Now, I asked on Twitter, do you guys think he was too hard on Kerry Roberts and Cross? Vast majority of people said no. Let me know what you think in the chat. I don't always have a good gauge for this because, like I said before, Alan Jackson is the personality type and the style that I like best in a trial lawyer. And so sometimes they can be a little harsh or demanding, and it doesn't feel like that to me. So I always like to check myself, and especially the way that I try cases. I want to make sure, where are the lines? How do you feel? Like, if you feel like a witness is lying or not being credible, does that give you more leeway to push harder? What do you people that might be potential jurors in your jurisdiction, what do you, the people, is what I was looking for, like we the people, what do you think about that?
was telling what happened in the back of the cruiser.
The timeline
You can answer.
you wrote,
So when you ask a question, let her answer. Okay.
the timeline you wrote, with Jennifer McCabe's help, influenced your testimony to testify in front of the grand jurors to a statement that you never heard, correct?
Yes.
You testified to the grand jury that you heard a statement that you actually never heard. It's a tough one. Now, she says she misunderstood the question. She wasn't sure. She did know it, but she didn't hear him say the part about her hearing that. And that right there is why perjury is so difficult to prosecute. Because if you get up in front of a jury and you're like, I was so nervous in front of the grand jury. He asked me what was said in the car. I told him what was said. I didn't hear it. Jen told me that that was said. But from my perspective, it was said. And that's what I thought the question was. So you can understand how the waters get muddy in perjury. I'm sure there are people in the chat that are like, that's crazy. It's so easy, slam dunk perjury. Okay. As somebody who's prosecuted and looked into and discussed criminal cases, it is a lot easier said than done when it comes to perjury. Many times. That's why I think it happens so much more often than than what is actually prosecuted. Okay. Then he talks about another police interview where they told her she better tell the truth or she might go to prison. This was basically the end of cross, and I thought it was a very strong end to cross-examination. Then we get to redirect, and Brennan did so much trying to bolster his witnesses on redirect that I think it was so much that at a sidebar, I would ask the judge outside the presence of the jury, can you tell him he can't bolster witnesses? Like, we should all know this for trial lawyers. You can't say, are you 100% sure? Are you lying or are you telling the truth? You can't do stuff like that even after your witness gets shredded and their credibility gets shredded. You just can't do that. Yet that's what he does. Were you trying to mislead the grand jury? No, you were honest, right? Yes. Did anyone tell you couldn't talk about this with other people? It was traumatic. So it's normal for you to talk about your friends about it, even if your friends happen to be law enforcement. This was a traumatic event, right? You were trying to help the O'Keefe family. He has her repeat some of what she said to Karen Reed and what Karen Reed said to her. They took their shoes off before they went in the house. Karen Reed didn't. And this is where it begins. There's some parts they want to try to make Karen Reed look bad, especially with the juxtaposition of our next witness. So they want to make Karen Reed look bad in front of the jury. And Karen Reed didn't necessarily do herself any favors with some of these interview clips that they're going to try to use that the defense even admits. This might not make her look very good. Was this just a story, he said? I'm just going to play the end here because it's just kind of a weird ending to me. And it didn't hit the way I think he wanted it to hit.
To save him that morning, do you have a distinct memory of it?
Yes.
Counsel had asked you if it was your story. Was this a story?
Say it again.
Was it a story that you told?
A story?
Yes.
It's what happened.
Do you wish it was just a story?
Sustained.
There's no further question.
Okay, so ReCross.
Was this just a story you were telling? And she's like, it's what happened. He's like, well, do you wish this story never it's like, I don't know. I didn't get that. But then she allows a recross and then another redirect. Kelsey, you can go ahead and put up a poll. Was Alan Jackson too hard on Kerry and Cross? Why are they able to bring up the prior trial? They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to. And I think that's why there was kind of a pause there by the judge. Brian B, isn't asking for the mistrial required for appeal? Yes, if you're going to appeal on that issue. I don't think they're going to. There are some questions about Ms. O'Keefe, which we're going to wait. Matthew said, could a witness technically retain defense or prosecution so they don't have to disclose their communication? I like you thinking outside the box there, Matthew, but no. There'd be a conflict there. They would not be allowed to be hired by any of the witnesses, in this case, the defense or the prosecutors. Let's see. What does the jury think they were not following Jackson last time? They definitely weren't fully with him, right? And they saw some of it as distractors. And that's why I asked these questions, right? We can act like it's so simple and obvious and everybody sees it the same way. I just don't think that's the truth. I just don't think that's the truth. I know there's a way I see it. And I know there's a way a lot of you see it, but that's why I like to get the way everybody sees it and talk about it. Okay. On ReCross, he asks again about what you heard. And again, she says, I misunderstood. He goes really hard at her on this ReCross. We'll listen to kind of the end of it here. It's a good time to listen to this while the poll is up. And do you think he went too hard?
What did you hear her say? That's
I
what your
think the word
testimony
was
is now?
heard, and I didn't hear it. I obviously got the question wrong because I did not hear anybody ask about a Google search.
Well, I know that's what
She admits she got the question wrong because she definitely didn't hear anybody ask about a Google search.
you're saying now. I get that. But when you were asked, what, if anything, did she ask Miss McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard, your immediate answer was, at one point, she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long dash Google hypothermia, end quote. Correct?
Correct.
That was your answer,
Yes.
correct?
To a question I misunderstood.
And that was a false statement, wasn't it?
Technically.
Technically?
Yes.
It's like being a little
Technically.
bit pregnant, Ms. Roberts.
Okay, so
Technically, he'll get you pregnant. And the judge is like, Zach Morris, time out. Mr. Jackson.
remember, jurors, I said earlier, comments of counsel are not evidence and you're to disregard them. Ask a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. What do you mean technically?
Technically, I was under oath and I did not hear Karen asked Jen to Google it,
And yet under oath,
but I knew it happened at that
and yet
time.
under oath, you said you did.
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
Objection.
Was that a lie? Did you lie?
I did not intentionally.
But you did.
It's like, technically I did, not intentionally. And that's the big part with perjury. So is she admitting to being a liar? Is she admitting to saying something that was not true? Yes, that is not perjury though. It's got to be willful. Can't be a misunderstanding or an accident or I really didn't know. And in this case, what I said was the truth, but I didn't hear it. So technically because of that addition on the end, maybe it wasn't the truth. So I mean, that's what makes perjury more of a gray area than just admitted somebody that they accidentally lied. What's a jury going to think? What are they going to think about this? That's what really matters. And the voting is the vast majority, 90+% think that Alan Jackson did not go too hard on this witness and cross.
And
Not intentionally.
okay, that's the end of
Understood
this.
the question, Mr. Jackson.
All right. Is there any other question or is that it?
I didn't know what you just said.
And she is not happy with Mr. Jackson.
That's the end of
Understood
this.
the question, Mr. Jackson.
All right. Is there any other question or is that it?
I didn't know what you just said.
I said I misunderstood the question, Mr. Jackson.
That's what you're saying now, correct?
That's what happened.
All right.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay.
In that quote, you said, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long? Then you corrected yourself and finished with Google hypothermia. What did you mean by how long? What were you about to say?
I don't recall.
Like someone told
What were you going to say? How long? What? I don't recall. It's like, knowing what we know, that feels like the biggest lie of the testimony. It's like, I think we all know what you were going with the how long. Like, come on. And what I would have said if I was her, which might even be true, is like, you mean now? What do I know that the context was of that? Oof. I mean, I think Jackson crushed it personally, but I always like to test the waters. Like, was it too much? Was it too hard? People see him as a bully. I don't know. But from my perspective, I think he crushed that cross. I think he crushed it. All right, then we're going to get to a little bit of Brennan's redirect here. Oh, just kidding. All right, so here, good. I was saving some super chats and questions for this part. Isn't it convenient the ring camera didn't work on the way out? So this was one of the focuses of Jackson's cross was, oh, the ring camera worked on the way in. But when you say she pointed it out, it wasn't working. Oh, how suspicious. Fine. I get it. I get it. But then when we have this to be played, I'm going to put it on normal speed for this. Doesn't that kind of take the sting out of that cross? Doesn't that kind of take the sting out of, oh, what happened to that ring camera? Is this witness lying about Karen pointing it out? It's like she's definitely, we can say she lied about certain things and she's not credible about certain things, but this bolsters and is consistent with her testimony that Karen Reed pointed it out.
We'll take a quick break so we can review this. There's a lot of clips. I'm not sure what this is. I'd like to see it before it's played.
Oh, whoops.
All right, how long?
So we're going to jump to when he actually gets to play it, which is 3:49.
All right, Mr. Brennan, whenever you're ready.
I'd like to play clip 3, please.
When my car was seized, there was a few small pieces of taillight missing that I had picked out at John's at 5:45 before we drove over to Fairview. I'm showing Jim and Kerry, look what I just did to my light, and I'm worried that there's gonna be some kind of electric short circuit. There's the bulb is showing, and some of the red plastic's missing. So I picked pieces out of the light housing that had kind of collapsed within the light and dropped them in John's driveway.
I'd like to have that marked as an exhibit, please.
Okay.
No objection.
The case would be better for the defense without that. That's all I'm going to say. I know the defense is going to say that was a piece that was missing. It was a very small piece, very different than the 40 pieces that, the cops smashed and covered up and whatever. Fine. But that's a difference of who are you going to believe about how much was missing, not that Kerry Roberts is making up the fact that Karen Reed pointed out the taillight was cracked and pieces, she picked out pieces at the time. So, again, I think that was a good play by Brennan, even though I think Jackson did eviscerate this witness on cross. And he did it so much, and he connected she and Jen McCabe so much that at one point, Judge Cannoni even called her Miss McCabe, I believe. A little Freudian slip, maybe. Not great. Not great. Best part is excusing the witness. Yeah. Thank you, Miss McCabe. Is that coming right now? Maybe we'll play it. I don't have it timestamped. Let's see.
All right. Rather than calling your next witness,
Oh, just kidding.
it'll take 10 minutes to.
I'd like to have that marked as an exhibit.
All right. Folks, we'll take do all of that.
Yes,
Why
Your
don't
Honor.
we take the lunch and recess? I'm sorry, is the food here? Okay. Folks, we'll take a.
She definitely called her Miss McCabe. I didn't have it timestamped, but she definitely called her Miss McCabe, which I was like, ooh, oh boy. Okay. Now, Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's mom, is the next witness. And there's a lot of questions that came in about her. So let me answer some of these. Why put the mom on? I think Peggy O'Keefe was a great witness for the prosecution. Did she prove anything? Not necessarily. But her breaking down was absolutely genuine. I felt it. I felt horrible for her. Humanizing John, what John did, who John is, how this family is, what she went through with John's sister, her daughter as well. Brutal. How can you not feel for her? How can you not want justice for the O'Keefe family? How can you not? I do. I want justice for the O'Keefe family. Do prosecutors not sure of their case try to get the most emotional testimony in? Do you think it's actually a thing? And how would you counteract? I don't think it's just prosecutors that are not feeling like their case is strong. I think you want the jury to understand the damage that has been done. and how they're dealing with this. From my perspective, I think that is incredibly important. That is incredibly important in every case. To realize this is a person, this isn't just a game, this isn't just a chess match, it's not just a puzzle, it's not just a whodunit, it's not a game of Clue. This is a real case with real people that are involved. Regarding Mom O'Keefe, should the defense have asked about her relationship with Karen Reed pre-question? It seems she didn't like her much. Wouldn't knowing that help show bias and existing rage/blame even that very morning? So you guys tell me how you felt like how she came off. I didn't feel like she came off like she despised Karen Reed. I think she came off like she thinks Karen Reed did this. But why bring that up and why ask that? Number one, I think the defense, A+ cross-examination of Ms. O'Keefe, which was to say, we're very sorry for your loss. We have no questions for you. That was the absolute right thing to do and the only thing you can do, which also shows she was a good witness for the Commonwealth, but not groundbreaking. Not groundbreaking. Let me see if there was... Mom equals empathy, but emotions don't matter, right? Listen, people can say emotions don't matter all they want, okay? The jurors' emotions do. What the jurors are thinking and feeling do. They matter to these lawyers. They matter to Karen Reed. They could matter in the outcome of this case. It shouldn't be about feelings. It should be about facts. It should be about the law. But to act like feelings don't exist, to me, you're missing part of the puzzle you've got to deal with as a trial lawyer. You've got to deal with it. You have to. Okay. So a lot of this was really brutal. Eventually we get to January 29th. Kerry Roberts called her, told her what happened to John. She did talk to Karen Reed, and this was important because we know there are some clips of Karen Reed saying things about what Ms. O'Keefe and she discussed. So let's listen to that.
I'd like to go back, if I may. May I?
Yep.
When Kerry Roberts picked you up in the car, did anybody go with you and Miss Roberts on the drive from your home in Braintree to Good Samaritan Hospital?
No, we were the only three in the car.
Who was the third person?
My husband.
During the drive to Good Samaritan Hospital that morning,
Yep.
did you ever have a chance while you were in the car to speak to the defendant?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about that conversation.
She, I asked her what happened, and she said, we went to a party. I left him there. I said, you just left him there? She said, yes, I just left him there.
Did she say whether she left him inside or outside?
No, she just said, I left him there.
Did she tell you whether or not she left him in the driveway or the street?
She just said, no, I just left him there.
You told us that when you got into Good Samaritan Hospital, you were walking down the hallway and you had another interaction with the defendant.
Yes.
And you told us that she was asking if he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe a little bit where in the hospital you had this interaction with her?
When they took us down to the emergency room, the doors open, and there was a corridor to go down to the other rooms, and she was on the left-hand side, and that's when she saw me come in, and that's when she started yelling, is he dead, Peg? Is he dead, Peg?
So when she was yelling, could you describe her mood or demeanor? Was she animated?
She's loud, and I don't know. She was just loud, and as she was saying it.
And when she was asking you, is he dead? Is he dead? Did you again ask her a question?
I just asked the nurse, what is she doing here?
And did you speak to Miss Reed herself?
No.
At some point?
All right. So that was the interaction. And that was basically it. And again, I already said what Alan Jackson does on cross, but then we get to an interesting discussion and argument about whether or not these clips should be allowed to be played at this point. And somebody asked, why can he play these clips between witnesses if they're relevant and they're in evidence and they're the defendant's statements and the judge doesn't find them to be inadmissible for any reason? He theoretically can play them just like we can read deposition excerpts at different points in the trial. And I think he's been effective doing it. Okay. People can disagree with me if they want to. I think it's been effective the way that he's doing it. And I mean, I kind of think these clips he's about to show are not relevant, but the only effectiveness of them is to get the jury to not like Karen Reed, especially comparing her to Peggy O'Keefe. And what we're going to listen to now is he made an argument about consciousness of guilt with the first video clip he wanted to show. And then Jackson's like, oh, I don't even have an objection to that one. So we're going to focus on the one that Jackson does have an objection to here.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think it looks like he got hit by a car. It looks like he got hit by a car.
Which again, I understand Karen Reed's misery and, you know, what she's been through. And I've had clients that go through things like this and it's impossible to understand. But this is kind of why I say, you know, emotions get the best of us sometimes. Not making statements is usually better, because taking that clip out of context and out of the whole interview, what's the jury going to think that doesn't know Karen Reed? I always say that too. 6 or 12 people that don't know you. They don't know the type of person you are, right? And I'm just speaking for my clients, right? The ones that I know. I don't know Karen Reed personally. But I have some clients that are great people, but the jury doesn't know that. And what is it going to make them think if they see this about you or hear that about you? And so this is the clip they're going to argue about now, whether or not it should be played and when it should be played. Because Brennan wants to play it right now. So Miss O'Keefe just testified, and he wants to put in a statement that Miss O'Keefe said, he looks like I got hit by a car, which she didn't even say in direct. How's that relevant? How's that coming in? I don't get it. What does this tend to prove or disprove?
Okay. So tell me how this comes in.
Similarly, consciousness of guilt evidence, the defendant making what we allege is a false statement to try to excuse her conduct of removing evidence of a crime from the scene. This has additional import. It has 2 facets to it. One, equally as important for consciousness of guilt in the first part, as I supported for clip number 4 or 5. Secondly, it is important because we've heard testimony from Peggy O'Keefe that this claim never happened. So we now have direct testimony that she did not have a conversation with the defendant, did not make these claims to the defendant. And so while also consciousness of guilt evidence, it has additional support from the previous clip.
Right, Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. With this video clip, Your Honor.
Jen said she thinks it was a huge mistake for Brennan to play the video he did after Peggy testified. It made it very clear why Karen Reed didn't feel welcome attention from the jump. I don't know. I mean, I got to be honest. I know how a lot of people feel about this. I think if I didn't know anything about the case and I was a juror on the case and I looked at this, I'd feel really bad for Peggy O'Keefe. I wouldn't have negative feelings about her. So if we're comparing and being like Karen Reed and Peggy don't like each other, you think they would automatically jump to Karen's side and feel bad for her? I don't know. I don't see this video's relevance at all.
It's very different. It has absolutely nothing to do with consciousness of guilt. The argument is baffling. How could that possibly be consciousness of guilt if my client is simply reiterating something that she believes somebody else said? This clip is obviously, very obviously, and strategically being used to try to vilify my client with something that's completely irrelevant. In Massachusetts, you can't call a witness just for the purposes of impeaching them. What this clip would be doing is purporting to impeach Mrs. O'Keefe, who just testified, I never said that. I never said it. I never leaned over the island counter. Never happened. So bringing this in would be used to impeach their own witness. And that's what can't be done in Massachusetts. With regard to consciousness of guilt, how does my client reiterating or stating that something that the victim's mother may or may not have said, how does that relate to consciousness of guilt? It doesn't. This is simply a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're trying to get it in because it makes my client look bad. They've just put on a very, very sympathetic and empathetic witness, John O'Keefe's mother, and they're trying.
And that's Jackson agreeing with kind of the sentiment I'm discussing here. It's like, it doesn't look great for Karen Reed, and they're trying to compare the two. And I think he's right. Like, a jury that doesn't know any of these people, they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, man, I feel so bad for this mom who's been through so much tragedy. And then Karen Reed looking not so nice. It's like, but that doesn't prove anything. It's like exactly the opposite of what is supposed to come before a jury. Exactly the opposite.
Trying to make my client, Ms. Reed, look bad by saying something, what they perceive to be pejorative, in a tone that's pejorative about that very same witness. He's trying to, at this point, there is no issue about whether or not Peggy O'Keefe leaned over and said something about the car, being hit by the car. He's trying to create the issue so that he can put this video clip in. Has nothing to do with consciousness of guilt.
It's not for impeachment of Peggy O'Keefe. We don't take the position that Peggy O'Keefe is lying. This is a statement of the defendant. It's in the form of an admission or a statement, which qualifies for admission substantively, not for impeachment purposes. The defendant should not be able to pick and choose which of her statements do not look good for her and do not look bad for her.
He's right, but that's not what he's doing. You don't just get every statement the defendant has ever made. Like if the defendant said, I hate people with brown hair. Like, come on. If that has no context, has nothing to do with this, was 5 years. You don't just get to put in any statement you want. It's got to be relevant and probative to this case, and it can't be overly prejudicial, which this clearly is. This should be an incredibly easy decision for Judge Cannoni, who, spoiler alert, doesn't make a decision today.
She made the statements that are relevant to this case. It's not unfairly prejudicial. It's a statement that they embraced and they chose and they publicized, and it goes directly to the issue of consciousness of guilt. Just because it hurts, just because it's incriminating, just because it's difficult for the defense is not a basis to preclude it. It is an admission, a statement of the defendant. It's admitted substantively.
If that were true, Your Honor, then they would simply put in the transcript.
So I kind of disagree with Jackson here. If they can put in the transcript, maybe they can put this in, unless, again, I guess what he's saying is like the way that she says it and the way that, like, the tone of her voice, the transcript would remove that. But I would argue if the evidence is allowed in, the best evidence is the video, because we don't have to guess at what the tone is. We know what the tone is. So I think that's less of a good argument, as this is not probative, not relevant, and highly prejudicial. I think that is the absolute winning argument, in my opinion.
Play video. Transcripts is one line. And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think he looks like he got hit by a car. He looks like he got hit by a car. Sorry. I think he looks like he got hit by a car. It looks like he got hit by a car. They just put that statement in. They want to play this because of its prejudice, because of the tone that it sets. It's not in evidence at this point. The witness who supposedly said the statement has denied having said it and said it never occurred. This is far, far more prejudicial than it is probative. If they want to simply use the transcript, that's one thing. But playing this video is simply being used to vilify my client because of the tone of voice she used in the crowd. That's it. That's what's not allowed. That's overly prejudicial, and it's not relevant.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about this. And if I decided to let it in.
She takes it under advisement, which is fine. If she allows it in, it's going to be played in the morning. I'm going to drop it down to normal speed so we can watch the clip that Hank Brennan does play for the jury right after Ms. O'Keefe took the stand, or right after she's off. RJ NLC said, if a juror, I'd ignore video clips, little to no context. So I don't often say this, but I feel strongly that is not how most jurors are going to look at the video clips of the defendant, who is very unlikely to testify in this case. Anytime they hear that defendant's voice, see her face, see her demeanor, it is a big deal. That's just my opinion. Usually, the vast majority of jurors think it is a big deal.
Number 4.
They had pulled into the driveway before me, so I was presuming she saw my cracked taillight. I was thinking, did you hit my son? I could sense from her that she was looking at me very warily. And then when John's nephew came home, I just wanted to see him and squeeze him. I don't know, it was quite uncomfortable. I said, Dad, I went upstairs to the master bedroom. I said, I think I need to leave. I said, I think John's mother thinks I did something to John.
All right, so there's the context Jen was talking about that might help Karen Reed, that's why she left. But also saying that the mom thinks you did it, that could have an effect on the jury as well. Charlie said, Jackson did good, but I think he could have done a bit a better job pointing out her timeline and opinion of the case was influenced by what she heard from the Alberts, the cops, McCabe, and other interested parties. So I think maybe he'll develop that more with the other witnesses because he has her in lockstep with McCabe. So once he connects McCabe with everybody else, I think that might get even better. Nina said, why had the defense text with ARCCA from 2023? Alessi said not from last year, deleted text 2 years ago. FBI came out last year. They're going to argue about this more. So I say, let's wait till we get more information and then we'll dig in more to that. Does Hank not know Guarino testified no Ring access from the laptop? Only Proctor had access to the Ring app. I'm not sure, but Guarino was the next witness, basically just background. He did a download of the phones, but he's going to come back and testify more later. I see you said, should Bev have asked her if she was lying? That is wrong. I mean, I think Judge Cannoni knew she was going to say no. Most people don't admit I was lying, but she said not intentionally, which is even better for the defense. Richard White, I'm late. Not sure if this was mentioned. Just wanted to share Court TV stream at higher volume than others. I checked. Hope this helps. Love your content. Thank you, Richard. I will try Court TV tomorrow. I'll try a different stream every day, okay, to try to get better and better for you guys. And yes, everybody, please hit that like button because we're trying to find the best stream with the best volume. But really, I show the clips for context so you guys know I'm not just saying things inaccurately about what was happening in court. I like to actually hear it and see it from court. I think that's what's so great about these cameras. I have about 11 minutes left. Next is Whitley. After Guarino is Whitley, firefighter, paramedic, saw 3 women, knew Kerry Roberts, was in the neighborhood with her, met Miss Reed and was going to take her to the hospital for the psych eval because she was threatening to hurt herself. You tell me, like with this type of guy, I think the defense is doing a good job of, actually, prosecutors even brought this out, but everybody's kind of connected and they know each other. So they're kind of building that good old boys club and they're dabbling in the conspiracy. They're not going head first into it. Is it enough? Is it enough? All right, let's play a little portion of his testimony here.
Thank you. Before you left, before you started to drive away from Fairview, were you having any conversations with the defendant?
Yes.
Can you share with the jury what those conversations were about?
So we were talking. She was upset. She kept asking if there was any chance her husband could be alive, and even sitting outside in the snow with no coat on for many hours. And
just the fact that he called John O'Keefe Karen Reed's husband the whole time made me think, like, come on, man. Like, you know about this case, right? You prepped for this, right?
Indicate what many hours meant? How many?
No.
How often did you raise the issue?
And they're talking about, Karen Reed knew that John O'Keefe was in the snow for many hours and he thought John O'Keefe was hypothermic, things like that.
Of whether or not, or how long he could be out for?
I'd say at least 3 to 4, maybe more.
Part of your job is to care for patients?
Correct. Yes.
Was part of your job to try to get them to the location safely?
Yes.
And sometimes you treat patients with physical injuries, don't you?
Oftentimes it is physical injuries. Yes.
Are you trained when you're trying to transport somebody and how to interact with them?
Yeah. Well, sometimes if they're upset, in this instance, she kept asking if there was any chance that he could be alive, and that we really didn't know what was the patient that ambulance 1 took. We really didn't know what his condition was, and but figuring that it was a hypothermia type case, being the conditions outside, we were trying to give her hope that
CB was saying a lot, and then I just did it. Yeah, it's hard to try to pack everything in, but especially with the Guarino stuff, there's no way to not make that boring, right? Like Hank Brennan had to check all those boxes, had to go through all that. It was boring, but there's nothing you can do about it. You have to do it.
There was a saying in the medical field, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. And I was basically, the stories of children falling through ice and falling into rivers and being underwater for multiple hours and coming out, being resuscitated and having no neurological deficits. So I was telling her those stories just kind of to say, look, let's be sure we'll get to the hospital. We'll find out more there. Just trying to give her any sort of hope that her husband would be alive.
Can you describe her demeanor when she was in the back of the ambulance with you during your interactions with her?
She would go from pretty upset, crying. And one instance where she kept saying, "I can't take care of these kids. I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids, and they're not his kids." And I, at that point, I understood who ambulance one had taken, because John was pretty well known in the town for taking on the care of his niece
So he knew who John O'Keefe was as well. Knew about the O'Keefe family.
and nephew. So I said, "Listen, it's okay. It looks like you have a very strong support system." And then Miss Reed said, "Do you know Kerry Roberts?" And she had been crying. And she picked her head up and said, "Do you know Kerry Roberts?" And I said, "A matter of fact, I do." And she said, "Anybody who knows Kerry Roberts wouldn't say that about her." And I said, "Well,
How's that relevant? Because I don't know how that's relevant either. I don't know why that came in. I don't think it makes Karen Reed look good. I don't see what that proves about this case. So she didn't like Kerry Roberts? Is that what they're trying to say? I don't understand how that's relevant personally. But he said it in front of the jury. And again, I don't think that's going to make the jury like Karen Reed more.
well, she did come to..."
That shouldn't matter. I agree with you. It should all be based on the facts and the evidence. Basically, every juror we've heard from in the interviews is like, I watched the defendant. I looked at their facial expressions. Even Lori Vallow's juror we just looked at early this morning when I recorded that video, they were like, she was laughing and giggling and smiling over there. Not supposed to come into play when you vote for your verdict, but oftentimes it does.
Out early in the morning to look for your husband in a blizzard. And she just rolled her eyes and put her head back down. And I thought it was just bizarre.
I'll strike.
He was pushing, right, to try and make Karen Reed look bad as much as he could. It was bizarre. She said this about Kerry, et cetera, et cetera. She was giving nurses trouble with the urine sample. But then we get our first cross-examination from David Unetti. He talks about how this wasn't your first rodeo. You've done these types of Section 12, wellness check type things where you have to bring somebody in before. He says, yes. We'll listen to a little bit of it here. We got just a couple minutes left.
34 Fairview, correct?
There's a fair amount of
I
activity.
mean, there were people and vehicles and lights surrounding that residence, correct?
I assume so, yes.
Well, you were there, so
Yep.
you don't really have to assume, right?
There was at least 2 police cruisers and a fire engine.
Right, and civilians,
And
and police officers, and firefighters, correct? And civilians.
Correct.
All right. With all of that activity outside 34 Fairview, did you ever see the homeowner come out of his house?
I wouldn't have known the homeowner.
And I think David Unetti and these defense attorneys should do that every time, because every time I think about that, every time they remind me about that, I'm like, that is wild. That seems impossible that they wouldn't come out of the house.
Do you ever see anybody exit the house?
I was not focused on the house at all.
All right, you were there to do a job, correct?
I was there to take somebody to the hospital.
And
So then Unetti goes into, is it better to have more information than less? This guy kind of says no. And it's like, what? If you're trying to treat somebody, don't you want to have their medical information? Like, what if they're allergic to something you're about to give them? It's like, I feel like, why are you arguing about certain things? But he wants to get into Reed's medical history about MS and that she has MS. There was an objection. There was a sidebar. Judge lets him ask. So now the jury hears Karen Reed has MS. Will there be some sympathy there? Will we have competing sympathies here? They go through Reed's statements to him again. This witness assumed he was hypothermic. He reiterates the snarky comments she said about Kerry Roberts. And then we get another common theme, which the defense is doing a good job of sticking to their theme. Reasonable doubt, credibility of witnesses. That's the utmost importance. And the witness's memory. How good is it? Can we trust these witnesses? And I thought this felt like maybe not a home run out of Unetti, but at least a double.
It looks like you have a very strong support system. And she picked up her head. She had her face in her hands. She picked up her head out of her hands, looked at me and said, "Do you know Kerry Roberts?" And I said, "A matter of fact, I do." And she said, "Anybody who knows Kerry Roberts wouldn't say that about her."
okay, and you've
So this isn't the part I'm talking about. We're going to get to his memory. Brian B., thank you. The problem is I listen on my phone as I'm doing a million things. So sometimes it's hard and it's just like I write down timestamps, but this is awesome. Thank you for this. Thank you for anybody that gives me help on how to make this easier, finding these clips and trying to put them together and play them for you as I go throughout the day working and doing a million other things. So anything that can make it easier, I appreciate you. Irish Girl, what do you think about the order of the witnesses so far? I think it's fine. I don't think it's the strongest case in the world from the Commonwealth. So I don't think they have a lot of great witnesses to choose from, but I think it's been fine so far. And I personally think Peggy O'Keefe was a good sympathetic witness for the Commonwealth. All right, now they're going to get into what I think was the triple hit by Yannetti.
Previously described that in testimony last year as her being snarky was the term you used, correct?
Correct.
But you were first interviewed by the police on February 8th of 2022, correct?
If that's what the report says, yes.
About 10 days after this?
About that.
And the events of January 29th were fresh in your mind on February 8th of 2022, correct?
As fresh as they are today.
Okay, so you do not allow that your memory was better on February 8th of 2022 regarding January 29th of 2022. It wasn't better on February 8th than it is today, is your testimony.
I would feel it's just as good.
Okay. Your memory does not get
That's wild, but it gets better. Yannetti fixes it.
better over time, correct?
I would feel it's just as good.
Okay. Your memory does not get better over time, correct?
For this case, it seemed to stick out to me.
Okay, so are you testifying that your memory gets better over time?
No, but
That would be crazy, wouldn't it?
correct.
That was one of my favorite moments of today, if I'm being honest. I love David Yannetti. That was one of my favorite moments of the day. He's like, you're not saying your memory gets better with time. That'd be crazy. And he's like, correct. Sure. Except that we have another firefighter paramedic who absolutely said just that. And I wonder if Yannetti looked over at the jury when he said it. I probably would have.
Okay, so are you testifying that your memory gets better over time?
No, but
That would be crazy, wouldn't it?
correct.
That was awesome. Then he talks about how he never mentioned the snarkiness in his initial interview with law enforcement. He's still neighbors with Kerry Roberts. Yannetti starts comparing like Reed as the outsider to all these people who are together. And, they get into the conspiracy-ish a little bit more. And that was basically it for today. We are going to start back with this witness tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday? And it seems like with ARCCA, because of the scheduling issues, we're going to do a half day on Friday, half day on Monday. I don't know. We'll just be at the court's mercy with when we're doing videos, and we'll get them in whenever we can. They won't always be at the same time. If you guys hit that like button, it'll push it out there to the algorithm. For anybody that wants to come see it, can come get involved in the conversation. Make sure you guys are subscribed and the reminder bell is hit, because you never know when we're going to go live with this stuff. If Karen Reed was to testify, what points are the risky ones the Commonwealth could get her on from your point of view? Interested in your thoughts. I would be floored, shocked, fall out of my chair if she testifies. I think they would focus so much on the drinking and what she remembers and doesn't remember, did and didn't do. These quotes, compare every statement she made in her interviews with what she says on the stand, impeach her in every little inconsistency. I really don't think it's going to happen. Rebecca, I believe that them saying she had MS was so not even an issue. Thank you so much for the coverage, Peter. Maybe it's going to become more relevant as the case goes on, but if Judge Cannoni would not have allowed it, I think I would have understood it at this point, but it's coming in. And Proctor is going to make fun of her for medical issues later, so it is going to become relevant to the bias shown and how they treated Karen Reed as a suspect in this case. Welcome to all the new members. I've got to run to get to this cheerleading showcase. Wish me luck. You guys are the best. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing. We're pushing our way to 500K. Hopefully we get there at some point in 2025. I love talking about this case with you. I love testing what I think, testing where I'm at. Is this right? Is this how a jury would see it versus a lawyer? And you guys are so helpful for that. I love your input, even when you disagree with me. Thank you so much for that. As always, that's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.